The Pittsburgh Steelers need a quarterback and a running back, and they're picking at 21 to fill one of those two needs. Now, they're going to fill the others throughout the draft. 21 is the most important pick, though. Do they go Jaxson Dart? Do they take a guy like Omarion Hampton? Will Omarion Hampton even be there for them at 21? I am fascinated to see, because Aaron Rodgers, if they get him, won't be there forever. Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, though they may be two good backs to get 10, 15 touches a game, probably cannot do the dirty work that a bigger guy in Najee Harris has done for them in the past. What are the Steelers going to do at 21? And I highlight 21 so much because this offense needs to hit that first pick out of the park, considering the rest of the picks they have in the draft, guys. When you go look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't have a second-round pick. They got 21, 83, 123, 156, 185, and 229. Every round but round 2, the Steelers will be on the clock. We're going to start this mock draft with the hope that a quarterback or running back that we really like is there for us at 21. If not, we may have to pivot. I'm not trying to trade up. The Steelers don't have enough assets to do that. We will pause a few picks away just in case, though. We see Ashton Jeanty goes off the board at 7. Shedeur Sanders off the board at 2. Obviously, Cam Ward off the board at 1. We are going to have our pick between, if we want, Omarion Hampton and if we want, Jaxson Dart. And I think Jaxson Dart is the player that we go here. I think when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, at the end of the day, Arthur Smith is not going to care who's going to be back there. He's not going to give somebody 20 touches a game. I think Jaxson Dart has to be the guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers, quarterback of the future, and potentially, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the now, of the present, of the near 2-3 months after they get out of training camp, where Mason Rudolph or another guy is not up to snuff or cannot lead them to where they want to go. I think this team at their best can compete with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chiefs, even the Bills, teams in the AFC that will be pushing for that Super Bowl title. Now, we got our big need at quarterback. We still need running back. I still think we need some DB help, but offensive and defensive line is the most important thing right now. When you look at the running backs who are available for the Pittsburgh Steelers at 83, you have RJ Harvey, who's a guy who's extremely, extremely good. He, again, is a guy who's a little bit smaller, kind of a Jalen Warren type back. Maybe won't give us what, a Quinshawn Judkins would have, or a Cam Scatabo would have, which they were off the board. A Dylan Sampson would have. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have to look elsewhere at this point. And when you look at who's available, you got multiple guys who are on the interior defensive line who will step in and be immediate contributors. When you look at this Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line, it's obviously pretty good, but they need some help on the inside compared to the outside. And Cam Hayward's not going to be there forever, guys. This could very well be Cam Hayward's last year or two in the NFL. They need somebody to step in to take some things off his legs as well, so the longevity of Hayward can continue. To me, interior defensive line has to be a part. When you look at Josh Farmer, this is a guy who's a little bit better in terms of rushing the passer, a little bit lighter at 6'3", 318. And then when you look at Jordan Phillips, this is a guy who's pretty solid in both areas, a little bit bigger at 320, nothing super crazy in terms of differential, but this is a much stockier guy when Josh Farmer is a little bit more of an athletic, lankier guy. I think Farmer is the pick here. I think that fits that Steelers defense a little bit better when you're looking at interior defensive line, guys who play primarily in the B gap. To me, that is Josh Farmer. You're never going to ask somebody to play over the tackle at 6'3", 318. This is a guy, again, comparable to Cam Hayward, I think, that can plug up gaps in the run, but can also get after the quarterback if they're motioned or if they're shifted out into the B gap. And I think Josh Farmer is the pick here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. On the clock at 123, Steelers could be looking running back. They could be looking interior offensive line. They could be looking at tackles. There are a couple players in this draft that can come in and immediately help the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking at Jalen Rivers, the best tackle available right now. This is a guy who's played on the left side of the offensive line, but could also play left guard if asked. Right now, when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers starting offensive line, it's solid. Broderick Jones has been, not great when he's been asked to play, but it's pretty solid across the board in terms of best 5, go move people in the run game, go keep the quarterback upright. When healthy, I want to highlight again, when healthy, this group of 5 is pretty good, but the depth is not there. That's the reality. The depth is not there. And I think Broderick Jones could come in and be a 6th offensive lineman if needed, but you still need a tackle. And I think Jalen Rivers is the guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He can play on that left side. You can move Broderick Jones into the left guard or right guard if one of those guys goes down. I think you prioritize outside tackle before you go anywhere else. At 156, the Steelers are on the clock. Again, we have our guy in Jaxson Dart right now, at least. So we don't really need to look at quarterback. I think a guy like Trevor Etienne is very, very fascinating. This is a guy who, again, he's quicker. He's makes people miss in space. A little bit, again, of a smaller guy, very comparable to Jaylen Warren, but has proven that he can do the dirty work. Like 118 plus carries in 3 straight years. Nothing wild in terms of efficiency last year, but consistent, almost 6 yards per carry the 2 years before in a better offense. He can help you in the receiving game as well. I am fascinated by Trevor Etienne. Less zone attempts than gap attempts, which is interesting because if you know Arthur Smith, that is primarily a zone run scheme. Looking at a couple of the other backs who are available right now, Kyle Mononga is very interesting because this is a guy who's taken on brunts of workload the past couple of years. 242, 256 in 2 years. Again, 5'9", 209. Not necessarily the bigger guy that they want. Marcus Yarns, a guy who's 5'11", 183. So a little bit taller, but more athletic, can move around a little bit more. But I look at these running backs and I look at Kyle Mononga as a guy who's had, how many carries did he have? Almost 500 carries the past 2 years, which is both a good thing and a bad thing inherently because you're a little bit more worn down. I still think the Steelers go best player available here. They don't really push for a running back who has more tread on his tires, and I think they look at the other positions. Looking at some guys who are available right now, you could always use some extra pass rushers. You could always use some DB help. I think when you look at the Steelers safeties, now that they have Juan Thornhill, I feel a little bit better about the depth. Deshaun Elliott, Minka Fitzpatrick. Like I feel comfortable about the depth. I think Beanie Bishop is a good nickel. I honestly think their defensive backs at least are fine. And I look at the overall linebacker room, like I think their defense is fine. I think the offense needs help. Calvin Austin's a good player. Roman Wilson, who knows what's going on with him? Outside of that, though, they don't really have a fifth and a sixth receiver. I think probably right here they take a chance on a receiver. A guy like Kobe Hudson is available. He is 6'1", 200. He is quicker. He can get open. He's very different than those guys like DK Metcalf and George Pickens, but he's still a little bit bigger. The only one that's interesting here is Kyle Williams, because Kyle Williams is 6', 186, very prototypical longer receiver, and he has had 61 and 70 catches in the past 2 years, 1196 in terms of overall yards last year, 14 touchdowns. I think this guy coming in and learning from Pickens and DK Metcalf could help them tremendously, but Kobe Hudson's a little bit of a quicker guy. He can play more on the inside, a little more versatile in my opinion, so that's who we take there. We'll be on the clock at 185, again, looking for potentially some DB depth, but I think they're fine in the DB world. I don't know if they go Denzel Burke. They love to play man. They love their middle field closed, and Denzel Burke, frankly, is not a great man corner. Tyler Shuck is available. We got our quarterback. I still think offensive line is probably the biggest issue here. The only other thing you could look at for this Pittsburgh Steelers team is tight end, because they did just sign Donald Parham Jr. this offseason, so maybe you don't. Let's look at the running backs who are available now. Jordan James, Taj Brooks, Ollie Gordon. I mean, Jordan James is a guy who's 5'10", 210, has a little bit of a bigger frame and has taken on a big workload. On 200-plus carries, averaged 5.4 yards per carry, caught 26 balls last year. He's pretty good. He's better in man gap, which, again, you don't necessarily want for the Steelers. Looking at Taj Brooks, again, very, very comparable. This is a guy who has a lot of tread on his tires, who's, again, a little bit bigger, can do the dirty work. I honestly think Jordan James is probably the guy here, just because there's a little bit less tread on his tires. We get our running back help, and now we really have scratched off all of our big needs. Offensive tackle, interior defensive line. I think defensive depth is probably priority number one for our final pick. We got to see who's available. I love Oronde Gadsden, but I don't really think they need tight end. I think Malachi Moore is a guy you can see he's played nickel, he's played in the deep half, he's played in the box, but they have so many safeties. I find it so hard to believe they really need somebody else. I almost want to go back and look at interior defensive line, to be honest with you guys. Thor Griffith is a great name, first of all. This is a 6'2", 320 guy. Ty Robinson, a guy who's 6'6", 310, so bigger, less prototypical interior defensive line guy. But this is a guy who can stretch out and play over the tackle, which is very interesting. So he's a bigger guy who can play on the inside, more of a hybrid type guy. I think that may benefit the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be honest with you. I think that may benefit them. We'll take Ty Robinson with our final pick. We will see what happens in terms of the overall grade for this mock draft. I think Jaxson Dart had to be the guy at 21. I like this draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're getting their quarterback of the future while also getting some players. Even though Jaxson Dart got an F at 21, getting some players to step in right away. I like this draft. I think this draft is solid. It's kind of tough for Pittsburgh not having a second-round pick, but I think Jalen Rivers is going to come in and potentially start at left tackle, be the sixth offensive lineman to step in at multiple different positions. He's played inside and outside. Josh Farmer will step in and play 30-plus snaps a game. Kobe Hudson will be a nice depth guy. Look, I think Jaxson Dart is underrated by PFF, to be fully honest with you. I think he's a third quarterback off the board regardless, and the Steelers need a quarterback. I think this draft is pretty solid. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, if you're new, we are doing a mock draft for every single NFL team, 7 rounds every day leading up to the 2025 NFL draft. So if you're new, you're not subscribed, make sure you do leave a like on this video. And there's a playlist below with all of the other mock drafts. I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you in the next mock draft, the Denver Broncos. God bless.